Everyone, welcome to Happy Hour Headlines. I'm really excited about today's topic. We have a guest here, Eric Karich, and he is a top patent attorney who specializes in protecting, developing, and profiting for new inventions. Today, we are going to talk about questions that inventors have, and he's going to give us answers and a lot of insight about the whole process. So, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so the first question that I have for you is, let's say I just invented something new. What do I do first?
Well, the first thing you want to do is you need to start by just doing some simple research just to confirm that the idea really is new, because it's very common that people think that it's new, and then but if you actually do a little bit of research, you can find it. So obviously, a very quick, easy way to start is to just do a Google search for it and look in the types of stores that you would expect to find that type of product, and see if you can find anything that's similar to that already. And if it's not already on the market, you can do a very simple patent search using the Google patent search engine. You can just keywords of the product into the search tool, and it'll find patents that are similar. And that's a really good way to find out, because sometimes people have patents on things that aren't yet on the market. And if you really want to be sure and have a professional search done, that's where you could go to a patent attorney and they can do a professional search and see if they can find anything that's similar. And if they can't, then there's a good chance you should be able to get a patent on it.
Okay, so the first step is to do some research and make sure that the idea is capable of protection.
That's right.
What do we do next?
Yeah, the next thing, it's kind of difficult because you're kind of juggling three things at the same time. And there's no rule. You can never have an ironclad formula because it just depends on the circumstances. The three things that you have to have in mind at the same time: patenting, protecting the idea, the manufacturing issues, figuring out how it's going to be made and everything, and then the marketing side, the sales side. Is this going to sell? And each of them they all kind of have to be done simultaneously. So you have to juggle and see, okay, now, like for example, on the patenting side, obviously, the earlier you can get a patent filed, the better. The U.S. is a first to file country, so whoever files first wins. So obviously, filing fast is good, but at the same time, you don't want to file on something that's not manufacturable or that doesn't sell. So you want to try and get some of that information as well to decide if it's worth doing a patent. So usually, a good way to solve that problem is to do what's called a provisional patent. It's a much less expensive temporary application that gives you a filing date, and then you're somewhat protected so that you can tackle the other issues. The manufacturing side is a critical one. You have to figure out exactly how it's going to be made, and very importantly, what it's going to cost to make, especially when you're in volume, when you're making a commercial product. What are your final costs of goods going to be? And then finally, you want to test that product and see if anyone's interested in selling it. And that can be small focus groups. Sometimes it might be actually trying to take it to a fair or what have you and selling it there. It depends on the product, but you figure out some way. Literally, one person who's willing to break out his wallet and hand you money, like that's really important information. And at the end of the day, what you need to find out is, when you've done the manufacturing studies and you know how it's going to be made and you know what the costs are going to be, then you can say, okay, can I sell the product? It's not just can it sell, but can I sell it for enough money to cover the costs? So if it costs $10 to make, if you have a 3 or 4 times markup, that means you're selling it for like $29, $39. You have to do whatever your sales strategy is going to be. You have to make sure that the numbers all work. And obviously, it's difficult to send it to China to get manufacturing information when it's still not protected and they might steal it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult to put it in front of consumers to try and sell it without it getting out.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of the way that most people do it are, file a provisional fairly early. Keep it as confidential as possible. Have them sign NDAs. Like if you send it to a factory, have them sign an NDA, an non-disclosure agreement, to the extent that you can get in front of actual customers in some small way to test. That's really what solidifies it. So once you can show, hey, we can make it for X, we can mark it up suitably and people want to buy it, then you'll know, okay, now I can go, like, for example, if you start with a provisional, you might then go back and file a utility application, the full primary application. And because by then you'll know that it's going to be a successful product.
Do you recommend going about it that way because it's so expensive to file a patent or because it's time consuming? Like, what is the reason somebody would wait to file the actual patent until the very end?
Mainly just budget. I mean, it's you don't want to pour a bunch of money into an idea until you have some, proof that it's going to be reasonably successful. And
Are
so
patents
a lot of
expensive?
times people, what's that?
Are patents expensive?
Yeah, yeah. It's typically for simpler mechanical, you're probably talking more like 6 or 7 thousand. For more complex things, it could be over 10, 12. Like software is probably more like 15,000. So they can get pretty expensive, whereas the provisionals are more like, 2 to 4 thousand, substantially less. And so you can file them very quickly and then figure out later on if it's worth doing anything further.
Okay, so I understand about the need for patent protection and for answering questions about manufacturing and sales, but what do you do then? So once you
Hmm.
have a product and you've proven that it can sell, where do you go from there? Especially, let's say someone has a startup and they don't have a large budget. What do you recommend?
Yeah, well, there's kind of two routes forward once you have a product that's kind of proven to be something that might be worth it. One is to actually make the product yourself and start selling it. And generally speaking, that's always meant raising some amount of money. It can be fairly expensive to launch even a small product.
Mhm.
So sometimes people can bootstrap, but it's a lot of times you're raising at least some money from friends and family. Maybe if you're bigger, you might be doing angels or Shark Tank or any number of things. But getting into actually making the product, a custom product, it tends to be fairly expensive. So I hate to see people, mortgaging the house to do that kind of stuff. It's a big gamble, and a lot of things can go wrong. So, um, you know, if you're going to make it, it tends to be, going the route of raising some money. And like I said, sometimes that can just be friends and family. It doesn't have to be a big deal. But so that's kind of one route. Another route that's especially good for smaller companies is just to license the idea to an existing company. So you don't have to get into the nitty gritty of making these things and having an inventory and like all the expenses that go with that. You simply find someone who's already in the industry selling that type of product, and then all you have to basically do is make one sale to them, and then they then go and make the product and sell it, and you'll have a license agreement where they pay you a certain amount. Like it's usually structured so that you get an upfront payment, maybe 50, $100,000, and then some percentage, 4 to 10% probably of the gross sales of the product. And that way, it's much more manageable for someone that doesn't have a huge budget. And you can get the benefits of, like, if you license it to a giant company, they may be able to exploit the idea far better than you could
Mhm.
internationally, even. Whereas, if you're bootstrapping it yourself, you're going to struggle to just launch it on a local market. So licensing tends to be a really good option worth considering.
Yeah, that sounds really hands off, and that's
Yeah.
that's ideal if you don't have to work that hard and can have checks coming in. Sounds
Yeah.
pretty.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's really helpful to go to trade shows. That a lot of times you can reach out directly to companies that sell that type of product. But I found personally that going to trade shows is a really good way to do that. So if you find the suitable trade show for that product, you can go there. You can find the companies at the show, directly talk to their new products people. It seems to be a very productive way to do licensing.
Okay, that's good to know.
Mhm.
Well, all of this sounds very exciting. So, if somebody wants to launch new product, what do they do today to get started?
So the very first step I would say would be to do the research that I mentioned before, see if you can find anything out there, potentially do a professional search and see if there's any patents out there. Um, the number one thing I would say is talk to an attorney as soon as possible. Most attorneys will offer free consultations. They can review the specifics of what you're doing. It's very fact intensive. So what works for one person may be totally wrong for another person. If you can talk to someone who has some experience with that, they can walk you through and give you the options as to what you should be doing. And the faster that you can get a patent application filed, obviously, the better. And then you can start. He can, the attorney can then also guide you in terms of um, figuring out how to manufacture, figuring out how it's going to, the channels of trade, all the different questions, the trade shows that you might want to attend, and more specific instructions on licensing. What you can come up with a licensing strategy if you're going to go that route. But there's really you don't want to go too far down that road before talking to someone who has some experience.
AI is shaking up literally every industry. And I find that it's making it easier for people to start businesses. Maybe there's less of a barrier to entry. Have you seen AI impacting your business at all?
Oh, it's unbelievable. It's a just an absolute gold rush at the moment for AI. Lots of new products being developed, and it's a real rush to the patent office really for a lot of people to try and get patents filed for these new things that they're developing. And it doesn't even have to be the nuts and bolts, the real hardcore technology things. It can just be implementations of AI for particular purposes. And yeah, a lot of people are filing now. It's a very exciting time. I kind of, it reminds me of the early days of the internet when the internet just started. You kind of saw that there was something exciting happening, but people really didn't understand it at the time. And then the world just changed, and a whole bunch of companies were formed. And that's kind of where I think we're at now. We're at the point where AI is just kind of becoming viable for serious work, and people are. I mean, a few years from now, I'm sure there'll be lots of trillionaires out there, running these AI startups that are going to become kingpins. 10 years from now.
It's an exciting time to be alive. I
Yeah,
feel like it touches so many aspects of our lives, and there's so many uses for it. I'm
yeah, it's
excited. We'll
unbelievable.
see so
I
many
don't think
exciting
people
inventions.
don't even have any idea right now what's going to happen. I mean, I don't even have any idea. We're just going to have to wait and see.
I remember just 2 years ago looking at my phone and computer and television and cars and all this technology we have around us and thinking, how could we possibly get better than this?
Yeah.
How could they make this iPhone better? How could they make the computer faster, more efficient, whatever? And then AI happens and it's
Yeah.
getting better and better every day. And so, like you said, we
Yeah.
can't even imagine what life will be like even just a couple years from now. So you're definitely in
Yeah.
a very exciting space for that.
It's a great profession to be in.
You have a fascinating job. You are working with so many different creative people. Do you ever have clients come to you with an idea that you think is absolutely brilliant or ideas that you don't think are going to do well?
That is, that's one of the big take homes I've had from all these years. It's like you really don't know. I mean,
Mhm.
uh, so many times people have strong opinions about what's going to be successful and what's not, and my experience says you just don't know. I mean, it could be anything. I've had things where I had one guy come in, he wanted everything, every kind of patent you could think of, and it was the worst idea ever. And there were lots of patents that were almost identical already out there, and I just was like, oh my god, no! Like, and he started getting into foreign patent applications and large amounts of money going into this, and I actually pulled him aside and said, I'm really conflicted here because you don't have any proof that this is going to work or that anyone's interested, and you're pouring huge amounts of money into this. And it went on to almost become a grand slam home run. He actually kind of shut it down at the end. Um, he actually was in the process of getting a multi-million-dollar offer to buy his patents, and he countered and said he wouldn't accept less than $100 million. And so that kind of torpedoed that license negotiation. Um,
Yeah.
but I was just floored at the fact that they loved the idea and they wanted to buy it. And if he had been willing to take $3 or $4 million, I think they would have just bought him out, and he would have been very, very
But
happy.
he
But
had to go for the 100 million.
yeah, yeah. So that was I was begging him. I'm like, please don't say that. I go, if you say that, they are never going to speak to us again. Like there's a zero chance that they're going to ever even speak to us again if you say that in the meeting. And he insisted on it.
Yeah, a lot of people watching this right now are they're inventors. They have these great ideas that they want to implement. So I think this was a really helpful crash course. And what I got out of it is talk to an attorney first and get everything situated before you put an idea out there and possibly have it stolen. So thank you so much for joining us and breaking it all down. This was so insightful.
Thank you.